Welcome to the Reclaim Project podcast, your gateway to exploring the power of resilience, rebuilding, and redefining what it means to stand in your truth. We share stories of strength and transformation, which we hope will inspire you to reclaim what has always been yours. In this episode, Lachie Samuel joins us in a candid conversation about the challenges he's faced from a young age. From low self-esteem, insecurities about his appearance, to a recent health scare that forced him to pivot and focus on self-care, Lachie bears it all. Despite all the challenges he's had and continues to have, Lachie has an insatiable appetite for helping others. So settle in for an inspiring chat.
Lachie, it's an absolute pleasure to have you in, man. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me in such a wicked space.
Actually, I was planning to get you in quite a while ago, but then had to leave it because you've been going through recovery, which we'll get into in a little while. But I'll just lay a bit of background. So you and I actually crossed paths years ago. So I was a member at Raw Fitness, and you were working there, and this is a long time.
Holy moly! Like Jandakot or Coburn?
Which is which now? Jandakot is
By the airstrip?
yes. So it was Jandakot.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a long time. Yeah. Yeah, and then we bumped into each other again at the Happiness Co. in Vic Park. Again, that was some years ago. So it's a thrill to talk to you, man.
Yeah, it's I think a lot has changed for both of us, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think at that point in life I would have been someone who thought he was doing well, who was like really broken in heaps of different ways. So it's cool to have gone through that, and then everything that's happened recently too.
No, everyone would know you as the FIFO mental health guy.
Yeah.
Yep. So you're doing some great things in that space, which, really resonates with me because I've done a couple of years traveling to different mine sites, just delivering well-being type content.
Awesome.
As well as, some fitness training. So I'm aware of some of the issues presented on these mine sites. Mm-hmm. So what you do really resonates with me, and so it's a pleasure to talk to you about it. So when did you make that transition from the gym environment into FIFO?
I think when I was at the gym, when I met you at Jandakot, I think that's when I actually started, because I bought a pair of like headphones off of someone. I bought them off of someone. I started using those, and I was interviewing people at HAPCO and a few other people around Perth at that point, and I was just starting my process of understanding like what a podcast is. And so I started to open up while I was working at Raw Jandakot. Started going through that, and I wasn't working as well. So like when I left Jandakot, when I left Raw, I just started doing the podcast. I was like, I'm going to focus on this, and the podcast is going to be my business, and I'll build it.
Yeah.
And it took a long time, bro. It took like a year and a half to get sponsorship for the podcast, to have the podcast going well. And because the podcast was going well, I started getting opportunities. Like I had, I can't remember what her name is, Narita or something. Yeah, Narita. She had an event that she used to do in Perth for mental health. And so we'd turn up to that. She gave me a chance to speak for like 2 minutes, and that was my first time speaking. Yeah. And I remember being so fearful of speaking for like a month before that I was like, nah, I'm giving up. I'm giving up. I'm not going to do it. I'm never going to speak. And so she gave me that shot. And because of that, because of the podcast and people connecting with it, especially talking about my problem with mental health, depression, being a FIFO worker, I started getting opportunities. First one was at that helicopter place in Jandakot.
Yep.
While I was working with Raw. Got a chance to speak there.
Okay.
And then, companies started giving me a shot because they were saying, look, we've had a psychologist come in, we've had EAP come in. They're awesome people, but they don't connect with the people that work here. They don't get it. Yes. I was just like, oh, I'll come and give it a go. Like, I'll just talk about my story. I don't have really any background in mental health or counselling or neuroscience, anything like that. And they did that, and thanks to Fortescue and WebDrill, I got opportunities that kept bumping up in that space, and I did that with Robbie from HAPCO initially as well. And so It wasn't intentional. I didn't expect to work with FIFO because I hated how I looked in FIFO because I was a terrible friend, a terrible partner, just a horrible person in general. And so like going back took a lot of like self-work to be confident enough to do that. And the more I've done, the more I've learned about myself.
Let's speak on that for a minute. Like you said, you were just what you perceived as being a horrible person. In what respect?
I think I was, looking back now, I was someone who was really broken. Like I was someone who never felt good enough. And, you know, going through the stroke and stuff, it really forced me to give up a lot of things that I used to mask how I felt. So like alcohol, it'd be, you know, giving up porn, giving up playing video games, whatever was there, sugar, treats, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
You know, I was just someone who, and I realized this because of rehab, I didn't feel good enough growing up. Like I didn't feel like I was manly enough or enough of a boy to be good at rugby league. I didn't feel like I was a good enough boy to, like, I guess, have the appreciation of dad. You know, I had a younger brother who was like good at skateboarding, good at rugby, good at touch, and he was boisterous. Like dad could like throw him around and he'd be up straight away playing with dad, and I'd be a little kid who would cry. You know? So I think, you know, a lot of the things that I've been through in life have just been from me not feeling good enough. And the more I grow, the more, you know, the older I become, like becoming a teen, I become a cheating teen because I thought, you know, if I have a girlfriend and then get, I guess, other girls, if I cheat and get attention and have them come in and then want to be with me and, you know, do all this sort of stuff, then hopefully I feel like that makes me feel proud of myself, that makes me feel good. And it didn't. It never did. Until I run away from everything at home to Kalgoorlie, and then found like being in Kalgoorlie, working in mining, making more money than I ever made in Auckland and New Zealand. I just thought, hell yeah, if I go up to supervisor, superintendent as a scaff bro and make heaps more money, that's when I'm going to feel proud. And so I never really found it. I never really found anything, and so I constantly used, you know, like ecstasy, steroids, or whatever I was doing to
just always trying to find answers externally.
Yeah,
you kept chasing.
Never found them, man.
No, because you keep chasing and chasing, you know. So when did you realise then, okay, there's nothing external that's going to satisfy me here. I've got to do some internal work and look after and take care of these shadows.
I think I realised it when I was doing the podcast.
Right.
It's, you know, open up. It's people coming in and talking about. Initially, I started it as talking to people who were going through stuff. And they were talking about what they were going through, and that was being published, and then people were reaching out going, bro, that's heavy. I was like, ooh, I should probably stop that and talk to people who have been through it, who have overcome it, and have a life that's heaps better now. Someone they're proud of, really. And so the more people I met, the more I realized, oh, shit, the things that I'm going through, I should probably try the stuff that they've done. And the more I did that, the more I learnt about myself, the more I learnt how, you know, the ways in which I treated, especially women in relationships, was really just based off of like me not feeling good enough. And the more I'd find about myself, the more I'd try to work on it. And so I went over to the Gold Coast, did Preston Smiles, I think his name is. I did those workshops, you know, the 2 days, 1 week, 2 days the next week. And for me, that was massive because it really brought me back to a place of like, dude, you've got a partner who is beautiful, who's amazing, and you're going to have a daughter, but you're not connected to them yet. Like you're not fully in love, fully committed. And through that, I realized like, oh shit, I'm not fully connected and committed because I don't feel good enough. And for me, making money, building my business was like, well, if I have all of this money, if I have this business and I've bought a house for them, then I'm going to feel good enough. Then I can let myself be loved or love someone else. And so, you know, the more of that I've done, the more I've realized. But really just like going through the strokes and having to come back from that, I remember being in hospital and I didn't remember my partner's name. Like I didn't remember anyone's name really. Like far out, I had my daughters show up and I couldn't remember their names.
So let's talk about that, man. So this was last year, and all along, like the one thing about you that I so much respect is you've always been transparent about your struggles. You know, like you're always on social media. So look, I'm not perfect. I'm going through this at the moment, and this is how I'm going to deal with it. And then I was quite shocked when that post came through last year, and you were still in the hospital. So let's talk about the lead up to that. Were there any warning signs before you being hospitalised?
I think there was. I was boxing quite a lot, so so I was getting my head hit.
Right.
But maybe for about 3 months before I went into hospital, and they like found all the clots in the brain and neck and stuff. I was having flights where I could get on a flight and I'd be on the plane and my head would hurt so much that I felt like I needed to cry. And I'd never had that before, never had like any sort of headache like that.
Yeah.
And so I had that maybe 7-8 visits to site and back. And then one day I remember being at my daughter Angel's cross country, being there. It was just me, my partner, my parents, and watching her. I was like, hell yeah. Get to see her, get to watch her, like get to celebrate her, and just be really proud as a dad.
Yeah.
And we went home, and I remember Katie was working out in our shed. Angel was there playing on her iPad, and then I was there with my laptop trying to like write a book. And I remember getting a pain in my head that I'd never felt and thinking, what the hell's going on with this? I need to go back in the house.
Yeah.
And so I went back in the house, and Katie come in. I was like, oh, it's all right. I'll just sit on the couch or lie on the couch. And I sat there and I couldn't go to sleep. And so that was Friday night. Saturday went to Cairo to try and sort it out. And then by Sunday I was just like, man, I can't sleep. I can't think. I don't feel like I can move. Let's go to the hospital. And I went to the hospital, got there, and they pretty much like kicked it back and said, oh, you've just got a flu. Like, it's just that, there's no problem. Like, go off. Go home. You can go home. You'll be sweet. Just take these drugs, these painkillers, won't be a problem. And so I started taking that. And then on Thursday, we had a sundowner that I was hosting, and I couldn't turn up to it and just thought, shit, I need to go to the hospital right now. Like, I can't handle this.
Was it a headache again?
Yeah. Just the headache had stayed there, hadn't gone. And I remember being in St. John, sitting there thinking, it's just a headache. I'm going to get rid of it. It's going to be sweet. They're going to tell me it's fine. And I went in and the doctor said, oh, you've gone to a chiro. I'm going to make sure I do this scan because that's the problem. It's chiropractors. It's their fault. And I was like, okay, cool. And she comes back after I had my scan and my blood's done. And she's like, oh, good news. It's not because of that. There's no problem there. I was like, wicked, cool. I'm going home. And she goes, but you need to go to Fiona Stanley. You need to go to the hospital next door. You've got clot all through your throat. It's like blocked that whole part of your throat. And then on the left side of your brain, you've got a massive clot. And she just goes, oh, I don't know how to help you. Like, you need to go. And so they obviously put me in an ambulance and sent me there.
Yeah.
And so, spent a week there. Got some pills, got blood thinners to help the blood move through the brain, move through the throat. Stayed at home and still couldn't move on the couch, and then went back to hospital. And just luckily enough, man, I was in hospital in an emergency department at Fiona Stanley, and the doctors kept saying, there's no problem, like he can have these painkillers, like take him home. And while I was in there, I don't remember anything, but apparently Katie was just like, he's lost his vision, like he's lost being able to talk. He can't stand, like I'm not taking him home.
Yeah.
And they just kept saying no, and she kept pushing back, which I'm very lucky for, grateful for. And then eventually I just woke up in this bed with all this shit on me, with my parents standing there. And then they put me in a ambulance to the Charles Gardner Hospital. And then I think I went unconscious again, woke up when I got there, and then don't really remember anything
Yeah.
except waking up and seeing family like randomly at different parts of the 2 months that I was there.
How close did you get to dying?
Very close, I think, what I'm told anyway. I remember a friend turned up to see me when I was in the hospital, and apparently I lost my speech and my vision while I was on bed with him there.
Yep.
And this was the first day in the 2 months that my parents and partner said, "Oh, cool, he seems good. We're going to take some time off. We'll come and see him tomorrow."
Yep.
And I was still sleeping. And I remember all of a sudden just waking up downstairs in this place. I was like, where the heck am I? But apparently my parents called my partner and just said, "Come in, he's going."
Wow.
Which for me is even heavy to think about. They just said, "Oh, he's got something wrong. The blood's flooding, the brain's flooding with blood. It's a massive risk. He's got blood thinners. We're going to have to do surgery on his brain, but he's probably not going to make that." And that's that was really hard.
Yeah.
Not that I was awake to experience it, which
Yeah.
I'm very, very happy about.
Yeah.
But I'm just lucky that the surgeon was already doing surgery on someone else, doing their brain. And he said, "Look, it's probably going to take me half an hour before he can get in here. Just take him for a scan and make sure that I do need to do it." And so they took me for a scan, and they're like, "Oh, no, he's good. His brain's fine. We don't know what's wrong." And so they brought me back and woke me up, which I still don't remember, and then started trying to rehab me after that. But yeah, there's multiple times where I was gone and meant to be gone. It's just
Oh, that's crazy.
yeah.
So what did that rehab look like? What did that involve initially?
No, nothing.
No.
Nothing in that hospital. Just because, and there's nothing against what happens in hospitals. It's just when you don't have enough nurses and you've got a lot of people coming in.
Yeah.
They just thought, well, he's going to rehab at Fiona Stanley. We'll just focus on someone else. So I just laid in a bed for maybe a couple of weeks before I could get out and go do anything. No one really come to see me. I was trying to run away from the hospital.
Yeah.
I was in a place with the stroke that I realise now is normal.
Yeah.
But I thought my partner was trying to keep me away from our house and our girls and keep me in the hospital because she didn't want to be with me.
Wow. Kind of, yeah, okay.
Yeah, that heavy, and I was just ready to go.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, why am I going to stay around if my brain's not going to work? Why would I still be here? So I just kept trying to leave the hospital. And so they just had to have someone sit outside my room. Yeah, my partner Katie couldn't understand. It's not until we left that hospital that one of the nurses was like, "Oh, just so you know, everything he's been going through and how angry he's been and how at risk he's been, that's normal for this stuff." They just didn't let us know.
So it's anger, frustration, I'd imagine.
Frustration.
Confusion.
I'd say because I got my life to a place, although I was overweight and unhealthy, which is a big part, I think, of what happened. I'd done so well with the business that we had nearly paid our house off, and I'd cut my days down on site to 2 days a week at most. And then the rest of the time I'd spend with Sage, my daughter, with Angel, with Katie, with my parents. And so I think even in that point I thought, fuck, if my brain's screwed, I'm not going to be able to get it back to what I had it at. No, life's not even worth living. Why would I want to be around? And so that's, I guess, going through rehab, going to Fiona Stanley, meeting nurses who were just lovely and doctors who really cared and forced me to work on myself, which is wicked. And then coming out and having to really change my health, my nutrition, and the way I look after myself. That brought me back to a place of understanding this happened and it's not what I wanted in life, but it had to happen. And if it didn't, I probably wouldn't be in a place where I'm committed to my own health And one of the coolest bits about that is being committed to my own health then made me super committed to the health of like my daughter who's behind on her age and has to go through a lot of rehab herself. But even my partner and my parents doing that too. So yeah, I'm just grateful for what's happened, even though it's not what I wanted.
Yeah, of course. So part of the rehab, I know there was some speech pathology. Mm-hmm. Is that still ongoing, or
I've finished that? So I've finished rehab overall now, which is pretty cool.
Jeez, that's really good.
Yeah, I'm very grateful. I remember being in hospital and thinking, yep, it's going to take me 2 months. That's what I got told through rehab. It's going to take me 2 months and I'm going to be back at work and I'm going to be making exactly as much money as I was making before. It's going to be easy. And then, found out, oh, God damn, it's going to take like 4 to 6 months. So kept working, ended up taking like 6 to 9 months. But going through that process, I think the only way that I got to a point where I could rehab and get my speech back, get my vision back, get my movement back properly, and get signed off to like work and drive is because of my focus on health.
Yeah. And you've been going full steam ahead on that. So let's start with the nutrition. I know it wasn't a keto diet that you went on.
It was like carnivore.
Carnivore diet,
Yeah, I think they call one ketovore. I don't actually know, but I started off with my health coach, who's actually based around here, and he just wanted me to cut out carbs because I was insulin resistant.
Right.
And like all the junk food you eat's not going to be good for your brain anyway, and your brain is what you need to heal because it's clotted. It's still clotted. And so I started off doing that. It was mostly meats, eggs, vegetables, and like some pumpkin or sweet potato, so less carbs.
Yeah.
And then I got to a point after I was doing that where I just started seeing YouTube videos on like carnivore, what it does, and I started that even though my health coach said, no, don't do that. so that was like me just being me.
Yeah,
I gave it a crack.
I was going to ask you about that because there are sort of two schools of thought, on that. Some people say, no, all that protein and fat's not good, and other people say, yeah, it is. So
and I think it's just dependent on who you want to believe. If there are people saying there's an issue here, then there might be an issue.
Yeah, true.
For some reason, I just found doctors on YouTube who are talking about like what it's good for. I was like, oh, if that means I'm going to cut out carbs and hopefully like begin healing my insulin resistance so that I'm okay eating carbs again and have fats going in for my brain, like maybe that's going to be good. So I gave it a go for 30 days and helped me drop a lot of fat, helped me like cutting out all the foods, cutting out all the drinks.
Yeah.
Even like cutting out milk, got some in this one now because that 30 days is gone. But even just cutting that out, it really forced me to go through all the different parts of life that I hadn't quite gone through because I had junk food. If I felt really shitty or I felt like I wasn't good enough, I could always go to the servo, buy some junk food, buy a cookie or a 7-Eleven donut. It was like, oh, shove it in, like, this is so good. Eat it, feel good for a second, and then afterwards, like, hate myself.
Yeah, and that's such a common pattern for people who, have sort of low self-worth or whatever.
Yep.
They go for that junk food hit. It's just such an easy hit and then feel rubbish afterwards anyway. So
absolutely. But it's been good, man, like doing that. I've gone back to like adding stuff in, like having milk if I want it.
Yeah.
Me and my partner go out and have tacos and Frio once a week, which I love. And now I've just added in, I'm just making sure that I exercise like quite often.
Yeah.
Just to make sure that if I'm having carbs, I'm also exercising to a point where I'm like utilizing the carbs that I've put in my body.
Yes.
So that they're not just being stored in the body and then the carbs in my body are storing water and then I'm feeling like I'm fatter.
Yeah.
Or like not feeling as good.
So you're training every day, like 7 days a week? Or you?
I'm doing weights every second day.
Okay.
So yeah, that's cool. I'm really loving weights. It's my favorite thing ever.
Yeah.
I've started like walking. Yesterday was my first day trying to run. So
really? Oh, geez.
I took Sage in her pram, put her in the pram, and then went to Champion Lakes and started walking. And that's like 5K. I was like, oh, I'm going to try and run with this pram. And so I ran maybe like 100 meters. I was like, oh, God, that's hard. That's bloody hard. And so I walked 100, ran 100, and then just kept going the whole way around the lake. And I was like, oh, that's...
Hard because of the coordination? Still not quite there? Or?
Hard because I'm still heavy in comparison to who I was when I would run, and just my joints, and especially my knees and my ankles have not been running for like, I don't know how many years, 10 years.
Well, yeah, because you're sub 100 now, aren't you?
No, I'm 102, so I'm very close.
Very close.
Lost about 31 kgs now.
That's incredible. That's crazy.
I'm happy as.
Absolutely. No, you look amazing, man.
Thanks,
you
man.
look awesome, bro. So, nutrition and the exercise. You're also doing other modality or other forms of self-care, like you're doing your ice baths. And is that just like an injury management thing, or are there other benefits, like for your nervous system?
For my nervous system, not 100% sure.
Yeah.
Like, I see videos on YouTube and I just assume, if your name says doctor, I'm gonna assume you're right. so I've been
like Dr. Dre, maybe.
I've been doing ice baths for a while. It's just, I love ice baths because when I think about people who are anxious, especially FIFO workers, I think about the person who gets on a flight, because I meet them all on site.
Yeah.
They get on a flight and then they start panicking internally. Like their head is going off, their breathing all of a sudden is like, and they can't figure out why they feel that way. Like, obviously that's going to make sense if you're in the sky and you're not touching the ground and you don't feel safe. It could be the same if you go home to a relationship that's really chaotic, whether you're a kid or a partner. And so the ice bath for me was always a really good way to reconnect to myself and learn how to change my breathing pattern.
Yeah.
If I was anxious before a talk, and you've done a lot of talks. Yeah. I don't know if you've ever been anxious before one and gone, holy shit, why is my heart racing? Hopefully I'm going to do well. Hopefully I'm not shit. Like the ice bath for me is a really good way to build the ability to actually catch your breathing, catch what's going on up here and go, okay, let's shift that. Let's change it, change my breathing pattern, in through the nose, out through the nose, breathing into the bottom of the lungs, filling the chest, and then out through the nose. Yeah. And so that for me, in the cold, is really bloody hard, just like it is being on a flight for me, because I had flight anxiety. And so like the ice bath has been really good for that. Yeah. I've seen videos that, the best way to do the ice bath is either after like a hard cardio workout. Like if you got a bunch of lactic acid, then helping that. And I don't know if that's really true or not. I'm just assuming it is. But now I do it before weights.
Before
and apparently,
weights, okay.
Yeah, apparently that's like a better way to do it. I can't remember what his name is. He was helping Dana White, and so he talks about that. And I started doing that, and I just like the way it feels. Like feeling really cold.
I suppose it would ignite the because it wakes everything up.
Supposed to, yeah.
Yeah, so that makes sense actually, yeah.
Yeah.
But what you were saying about it's meant to be good after cardio, so the girl we were talking about before off air that we both know, so Brooke McIntosh, that's doing this massive run.
Yep.
Good on her. So she's been doing her ice baths at night, so after her 80 Ks.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's the most cardio you can do. When I'm saying cardio, I'm saying like sprints on an assault bike. Not a whole day of running.
Not a whole day of running. I mean, I can't even fathom that kind of cardio, mate. So.
I'm very proud of her.
Yeah.
And like even when you think about ice baths, it's like all the footy teams, all the league teams, all the sports teams do that stuff, right?
Yeah. And, I used to play union and, I had no idea about the science behind it. It was a wheelie bin, with water and ice. So I used to hate it. Like, geez, this is it's not that okay. It's got to be something to do with minimising your bruising or something like that. I hated it. I just hated getting, 3 minutes was a long time.
And I love just doing that every day. It's just something that brings me back to no matter what's happening throughout the day, no matter how hard life feels, the moment you get in an ice bath, you can't think about anything else except, holy shit, this is cold.
Yeah.
So like coming back to that and like controlling your breathing.
And that's really because all you want to do is hyperventilate because it's that shock,
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've also, I don't know if you would have done the cryotherapy up at, there's a couple of places, but I usually do it at, yeah. And to me, I find that different to an ice bath. I don't know. I find I can tolerate it more because it's just cold air.
Yep.
You get through the first 15 seconds and then it's fine. You can breathe normally. But it's not minus 97 degrees Celsius.
Yeah.
So it's not pleasant, but I handle it better than I do an ice bath.
Yeah. And I think having your hands covered makes a big difference. Like even in an ice bath, if you got your hands in and you've got movement so that the water's moving around and you've not got like a layer of heat around your body, some form of. If you got your hands in, your hands go numb very fast, and that's hard to accept. And so sometimes people just put their hands up, and that's a little bit easier. So it's really cool, man. Like I love, although I wasn't happy and couldn't accept what happened, if it didn't happen, then I wouldn't be doing all these things that are improving my life and the way that I see life, the way that I love myself, the way that I love like my daughters, my partner, my parents, and like everyone else.
And that's, again, a common thing about adversity, it just switches your perception in a big way, your perspective. Sure. But now you've accepted it, you've done the work. What's the prognosis now going forward in terms of full recovery? You're fully recovered or you're still a work in progress?
Fully recovered. Hyperbaric chamber is next. Okay. So I've got to do 40 sessions of that. I was supposed to do it before, but because I was on seizure meds, I had to sign off and say if I collapse in the chamber on seizure meds, that's my problem. So I was like, nope. So 40 sessions of that, and the idea behind that, those HBOT guys from America that do all the teaching for that, talk about how good that is for people who go through strokes and how good it is to pump that much oxygen into the body, especially into the brain. So that's next, and the idea is to hopefully heal the clotting in my brain so I can utilize more of my brain because there's a lot missing at the moment.
About your memory, is that?
Memory, it's not 100%.
Not 100%.
I can't even remember the sessions that I made for FIFO Mental Health Group and that I would have done 100 times plus for each one. I can't remember what's in those. Sometimes I get the names of like my daughter or my partner wrong. Sometimes I call my daughter my high school girlfriend's name. Wow. And like, what the heck? Where's that coming from?
Yeah.
And even like people that I know, I'll forget who they are for a little bit. Like if someone calls me and their name doesn't pop up, I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, man. I'm like, I don't know. Wow. Are you from mining? Are you from FIFO? And they'll go, oh, maybe I'll just call you back later. It's like, okay. And then maybe, 2-3 minutes later, I'll go, oh, shit. It was Andy.
That's who it is.
It was Andy from the Gold Coast, my bro. Like,
jeez.
And so there's all of that. But I'm very happy with where it is. And, the more I stay committed to eating well, looking after my body, I'm on I can't remember what it's called, but you take a bunch of things in like a 3-month period as part of my health coach's plan. And that's for helping me get rid of the spike proteins. So like from the vaccine, which is a part of why I think I got what happened. So trying to get rid of the spike proteins that are in my body that are like, for a lot of people, causing clots.
Yeah.
So I had clots initially in my hands. And got sent home from the hospital for those, and then had myocarditis in my heart initially.
That was my next question. Yeah,
had that initially, and got sent home from the hospital with that as well. So both of those, like, there's no problem there, and then the clot in the head, there's no problem there.
Yeah.
So it's up and down, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
And for me, it's just a case of trying to work on myself health-wise to get to a point where hopefully my brain can get rid of some of the clotting. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. I accept it either way. And then the spike proteins and then just heavy metals in my body from the scans I've done and the stuff I've done through hospital, and just the ways that I've treated my body. Like, when you're someone who puts work and money above everything else, because as soon as you hit those goals, you feel good about yourself, and hopefully people will bloody love you and you'll love yourself. It's really easy to like do all the shit that's going to put heavy metals and, you know, chemicals in your body. And I did a lot of that. So as much as there's this stuff here to work through, I could blame it on shit that's external, but like, it's my choice. Everything's my choice. True. And I put myself in all of those positions.
Correct. Yeah.
And then now I get to put myself in a position where I'm finally coming back to understanding that I should focus on myself, my health.
And that's the thing, man. All these little acts of self-care, they're the ones that culminates in full self-love, you know? Like, that's where it comes from. Once you have that self-love, it just emanates. That's when people are drawn to you. Not from external stuff.
Well, I'm 34, and maybe 1 month ago is the first time, because every morning I do body emotion practice, one I've just randomly made up, and I do it and I see what's in my body in terms of sensations, and then I feel those and then figure out what the emotion is. And usually, because I do it every day, every morning, usually it's like anger, sadness, not good enough. But there was a patch of like 1 to 2 weeks where there was nothing heavy, like nothing like that. First time in however many years I've done it.
Wow.
I was like, what the hell's going on with this shit? Like, this isn't right. Because obviously I've been used to like
so used to it,
heaviness and then feeling the heaviness and letting that go and letting peace and like relaxation and happiness and contentment come in. But when the heaviness wasn't there, I was like, what the hell is here? And I finally realized, oh shit, I actually love myself. Like, what the hell is this? I've never loved myself ever since I was a kid. Never.
Yeah. I know what you mean. Like, it's a foreign emotion because it's never been there, and you're so used to that heaviness, you go and almost search for it. And like, hang on, where's that heaviness? You know, it was shit house, but I miss it. I miss it, but it's what I'm used to.
Yeah. Where are you, heaviness?
Yeah,
I'm a warrior.
You know, but that makes sense. That you would almost feel uncomfortable with loving yourself because it's something you're just not used to.
Yeah. One of the coolest things about feeling like I love myself is like with my body. And like I had a lot of body shame, you know, because when I focused on my body, I was taking steroids. I was taking like way too much test, way too much tren, way too much clenbuterol. It's like ridiculous amounts. But I didn't know how to put on muscle, so I was still like just lean. and like I was focused on my body then, but I never accepted that I looked good. You know, I looked back to what I looked like. I was like, what the hell? How could I not enjoy looking like this?
Yeah.
I still hated myself, but I still tried to get the attention from women because I had this body, you know?
Yeah, of course.
And so like what I realized in like loving myself now is like, shit, I love my body more now than I did back then when I was shredded as hell. And it's only because, like, I'm accepting where I'm at. I don't need to be that end goal quicker.
Yeah.
I just need to, like, feel a sense of pride in the way that I'm showing up for myself right now. And so I've still got weight to drop, but, like, I'm going to the beach and taking my shirt off, which I never would have gone to the beach for because I hated the way I looked.
Wow.
And so the more I love myself, the more I love the way I look. The more I love the way I look, the more outgoing I am as like the kid that I was. Like the person I remember who I was as a kid, it feels like that's come back because I've stopped hating myself because I don't feel good enough.
That's awesome, bro.
Yeah, it's wicked.
And it shows like you're really radiating, like it's
yes,
yeah, you are, man. No, I'm not just saying that. Like you're like a pregnant woman that's glowing. Like,
oh, thank you.
But bro, in terms of like you said, with work, some of the modules and some of the stuff that you delivered that you've been delivering it hundreds of times, that you're having trouble remembering. How does that look like in the future for you? Are you looking at going back to that role? Or do you think you're going to have to take maybe a backward step and then the other crew take over?
Yeah, well, thankfully Corey, who's part of the business, like a partner in that too, he's awesome at speaking and he understands it. He's done it 100 times as well. So I'm very lucky that he can just take that over and go and do that. I've been told that I can get on a flight and I can fly to site. I just have to take more blood thinners so that my brain doesn't clot again. I'm like, hell no, I'm not getting on a plane until I know by looking at the imaging that my brain's better.
Absolutely.
So, removed myself from that. And actually, I met with Josh and Corey today to talk about like, hey, this is like there's a shift here. It was FIFO Mental Health Group, and that made sense for me because I wanted to help people with mental health. Like that's where I thought the issue was. But now there are so many people who are really good, psychologists, EAPs, talking about psychosocial and all that sort of stuff, and they're really clumped into mental health. It's like what I've been through and the way I want to show up no longer fits that by itself. So, mental health is like a portion of what people need to work through. And so depending on how it goes, I think it seems like I've committed to changing it to Forged by Fire, like the business name. And the idea being helping people, number one, fix themselves, and then number two, fix their relationship. And probably just going to be the only two areas that I focus on. Yeah. It's not like I'm offering anything at the moment. I'm still in a place where I'm making sure that fits and that I understand the messaging and marketing and feel clear about it. But that's where I'm moving to. And although it means losing a portion of what I do here with FIFO Mental Health Group, we've got Corey who can take that stuff over and be the person who can really go out and help people because he loves mental health and he cares about that stuff. So, I'm shifting a little bit in it. I'm shifting to a place where I would want to help people the way that I've been helped through this experience. Like that makes the most sense to me.
Yeah, because, when you're in a scary, confusing place like that, like you said, you had the anger, you had the confusion, you had the frustration, and then trying to navigate a clunky health system. And it is clunky. Like you told me, like you said earlier, how many times you've been turned away, saying, okay, just take these painkillers, you're fine. And mental health system is the same. It's very clunky to navigate, so that can add to you're already feeling shit out. So when you're trying to navigate a system that doesn't work optimally, that just adds to your angst. That just makes things worse.
Yeah, and I think the shift has been, we were in there helping companies and we were helping FIFO leaders, and it made sense because it's like, okay, cool, if we can go in and like help these companies, hopefully they would help their people. But the more I see these like health professionals going in and that being available, it's like, oh, they can focus on that. Let's like shift the focus from like company and the people just to the people, like focusing on the individuals themselves. Like whether the company pays for it or the individual themselves comes to workshops that we're doing in town, I would way rather focus on them, because if they get to a point where they realize, oh shit, there's a problem here, I don't know what to do about it, and we can connect with them and help them work through some of those things that's holding them back, that's causing a lot of shit that they're going through, then hopefully they can work on that process themselves while they're at home, while they're on R&R, because one of the problems with doing it on site is that the company has to give up time that people work for them to come see us.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that's like, for some supervisors, when they're sitting in a mental health talk, they might be sitting there looking at their watch constantly, tapping their foot like, geez, man, I'm not hitting my KPIs today. You're keeping their hair for too long. And that's happened a lot. We can have the company feel comfortable that they're not giving them the time, the supervisor's not feeling like they're losing their KPI targets, their goals. And then the person there doesn't have to worry about, oh man, if I'm open about what's going on, does that mean I don't get to go up to supervisor because they don't want someone with that problem?
Of course.
Or do they like want to axe me because I've got an issue? So
absolutely.
Yeah, I guess we can help people without those potential problems, or that resistance.
The same thing applies to, I'm from a policing background. I used to be AFP, and the same thing applies to that industry, where guys don't want to come forward because of that, fear of chastisement, or they won't progress in their careers because they've now been labelled as sort of damaged goods, and also the EAP services, you mentioned them before. Yeah, they're there and it's good that they're there, but it's quite a diluted service, It's just kind of there to tick some boxes, I find. So,
I think so. It makes sense, like it seems like an easy way to say, well, if you have a problem, you can go here. And for especially a lot of leaders, that makes sense in terms of like, oh man, I don't feel confident or comfortable having a conversation like that. Hell no, go here. But the problem is if you've got a service that is corporate, someone who works away, or someone who, is a tradie, and they call someone and it's someone who's super corporate who works in an office, they're not going to connect with each other. And that's one of the hardest parts about it. So I hope we fix that.
I like I said, I travelled to quite a few sites, and I did offshore as well. And I did I did a year with Inpex on their platform and their FPSO, and they would every quarter bring over EAPs for for 2 or 3 days to cover the different shifts and all that kind of stuff. But it was you could tell, you read the room and people are just listening to the session because they're required to. Nothing hits home. But good that they fly them over there because, those guys are on even time, either 3 and 3 or 4 and 4. So it's a long time in isolation or in close confinement with 100 and 150 other people in a very confined space. So it's a lot of, the suicide rate. I don't know what the suicide rates on mine sites are at the moment, or if they declined, but offshore at the time, this is pre-COVID, was quite high.
I think it would be quite high in mining. It's just that, it's been very easy over the last however many years to, obviously if someone takes their life and they're a part of your business and there's a fear of that making people look at what you're doing and how you're treating people and why that happened, it's just way easier to throw it under the rug. And, no matter whether it's like companies in Karratha or companies here in Perth that send people to site, it's made the most sense that like that stuff's not coming forward because they don't want it to, because there's a risk, especially insurance-wise for them and the amount of money they make and the amount of money they have to give to people who are part of,
Again, same with policing, though. It doesn't get out there because then nobody would join.
Yeah.
But it's a huge problem in policing, It's there's a lot of personnel that struggle, that don't come forward. It's still, unfortunately, a huge issue.
Yeah, well, my old man, he's just left the police force. I think he was a copper back home for about 30 years.
Oh, yeah.
And so he's come over here and, that's all he's done, all he knows. And so it's really hard for him to figure out what's next. And then we talk about like him growing up, in his hub in Papakura in Auckland, they had a bar in there so they could go and drink after shift. And that was like, he just said that's part of what they did.
Absolutely, yeah.
They had this like culture where if you go through deaths, then you just come back and have some drinks and that'll be it. And that's how you like deal with the issues.
Yeah.
So it makes sense.
Every AFP office around the country that has a floored bar, on the floor. So ours here in West Perth was it was on the top floor, and same thing.
Wow.
You deal with a shitty situation, you just go upstairs and drink.
Yep.
Same deal, And I can understand, like you said, 30 years, and now he's kind of finding himself basically because you do become really institutionalized, that's all you know.
Yep.
And also it's very hard to slot in as a civilian because for so long you don't see life from a civilian perspective. You see a very different part of life.
Yeah, you get to see all the worst.
You see the worst of the worst. So it's very hard to slide into normality.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so it makes sense.
Yeah. And I guess just going back to FIFO, when guys come back on R&R, I think it's quite difficult. Even the 8 and 6, let's say 6 days at home, it's very hard to re-assimilate in 6 short days because, the first couple of days you're kind of sliding back into family life and then you've got to do some maybe social stuff that makes you feel normal.
Yeah.
And then the last couple of days your head's into thinking, I've got to go back to site now.
Yeah, that's a massive part about FIFO is like understanding, especially within a relationship, how to, your partner, how to show up for you when you get home, like give you a little bit of space just to like reconnect at home, and then have those conversations that you need to have where you understand what they need from you. Because especially if you got bloody kids, you got a partner who's at home, who's been looking after the kids, maybe working, looking after the house, putting the bloody bins out, all the stuff at home, and then you come home for them. It probably feels like an immediate like release. It's like, cool, you can help me do this stuff. But if you don't talk about what each of you need to do and why, you guys will be hitting like goals that don't fit the other person or targets, and so you're just going to end up like getting upset with each other, not really connecting.
A bit of a lot of friction if you don't communicate sort of expectations and
absolutely
and that kind of stuff.
And I think as a FIFO worker, you have to understand that if your partner's at home and you got kids, then they've got life sorted a particular way. And for a lot of women who reach out, they're like, I prefer it when my partner goes back to site, because then it goes back to like what it is. Yeah,
you've got a set routine sort of sorted.
Yeah. And so for the FIFO worker who's coming back, you got to understand that you've got to fit the way their life is. Like when you go to site, everything gets done for you.
Yeah.
Like yes, you have to work 12-hour days, which is shit, but you come back. If you fit what's already there, then you're going to help your partner, you're going to help your kids, and it's not going to make them hope for you to go back to site a little bit sooner, because they do the things that they're used to doing. So,
absolutely.
But that takes a bit of courage, and it means no matter what you want, having conversations and making sure you manage that with your partner.
Yeah. So that, for lack of a better term, that relationship coaching, would that just involve the FIFO worker, or you try and bring both parties in?
So not in terms of like, if you go to a psych and your relationship goes, there's like a psych and then two people sitting there.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be in that form where we're like trying to wedge what's going on between the two of you and let's fix that.
Yeah.
In terms of relationship, it's a 6-week block of fix yourself first. So for the FIFO worker, like fix yourself, understand what's going on. What are the emotions there that you're like really struggling with? Are you super stressed out?
Yeah.
Are you really angry? Do you feel like you're not doing enough in work? Whatever. Fix that stuff, understand why it's there, understand what moment in your life that's attached to, and accept that those moments have happened. Stop fighting the fact that they happen. Accept that they're there and then move forward. And then after that, a 6-week block of relationships where that person can continue working on their relationship, but their partner can jump in and work on their side of the relationship. Beautiful. And so if you figure out how you show up within the relationship, you will fix the relationship to a certain extent. But if both of you do it, that's going to work, right? If you come in and you're a FIFO worker saying, my bloody partner is this and I need to bloody fix what they're doing because it's not good enough, then you're just going to constantly butt heads.
Constantly, absolutely.
So that's never going to work. It's just focus on yourself, and that will like fix the relationship.
I don't know about FIFO workers, but I know police are very stubborn. They're very stubborn, mate. Like, it takes a long time to come around.
Well, you have to be very masculine to be a cop.
Yeah, and
in the way that you show up and you behave, you go through that stuff.
That goes for females as well. You have to have masculine energy about you.
Absolutely.
And that comes with a degree of stubbornness. So, doesn't it? But yeah, no, you're right. So things are happening in that industry, which is good, positive stuff. So,
that's cool.
Yeah, long way to go, but it's happening nonetheless.
Yep.
Yeah, mate, it's such a pleasure to see you bounce back the way you have.
Thanks, man.
You can only go from strength to strength from here. I wish you well.
Thank you.
And thanks again for joining me, mate.
Thanks, brother. The brother that I met at Raw in Janitor.
Absolutely. The Raw OGs.
I know, right?
Thank you for listening. We look forward to your company next time. If you've enjoyed this episode, please consider the subscribe button below.